welcome to Point of View. I'm Pastor Josh Barnes. This is Jonathan Barnes, and this is another half an hour of absolute quality and excellence in TV, in radio, in theology, in politics, in culture, in the whole nine yards. And the reason why we know we're right. Here's the thing. This is why this show is so good. When we say something, we're right.
Yes, that's true.
But it's not because we say things are right. So it's not just everything we say we're right about, okay? We're right when we are in agreement with the Bible because we know the Bible's right. So like there's lots of shows, lots of commentary that'll say this or that. But we know at the end of the day when it all boils down, we know where we agree with the Bible, we're right. We know that because Jesus died on the cross, rose from the dead, and people don't just do that. That's a miracle. And, God doesn't just work miracles and raise people from the dead if they're liars. So Jesus was obviously telling the truth when he said the Bible is true. So then that means that, hey, as long as we agree with the Bible, I'm right. That's awesome. I love being right. And it's pretty cool. Pretty cool way to be. Anyway, so we're going to talk about the transgender stuff today, which we've never talked about before on Point of View.
Totally new subject. We're in uncharted territory. Here we go.
We do a lot, but this is in our culture. It's in our society. When we do reviews for like TikTok videos, which this is one of our TikTok review videos, we are always, this is just constantly coming up. It is the new thing. And I say, if they're going to make a big deal about it, we need to make a big deal about how ridiculous it is. And we need our response ought to be equal to that. So Justin Barnes is not with us today. Jonathan Barnes is joining for a second episode of the week because he's so famous and popular.
Is here.
Actually, I just talked him into it. And I have some surprise TikTok videos to share with Jonathan that he has not seen yet. And they're all in relation to transgender. Now, Jonathan, have you heard about what's going on with the whole transgender thing in Florida?
In Florida specifically? No, I have not. What's going on?
Okay, so this is a story from earlier this month. This is it's specifically about the response to what DeSantis did. But Governor DeSantis signed a parental rights bill. And this story that I've got here is from the Daily Wire talking about the response, people chanting outside. But let me see if I can see the people are calling it the Don't Say Gay bill. Here's what Daily Wire says about it. But as pointed out by NPR, what the bill actually does is prohibit instruction on LGBTQ topics for kindergarten through third graders. And it provides parents more transparency by requiring schools to notify them of any change in mental, physical, or emotional well-being, and allows schools to opt out if there is a reasonable fear that notifying a parent would result in abuse. So the legislation prohibits any instruction about sexuality or gender between kindergarten and the third grade. This, by the way, should be a no-brainer. Why this has to be put into law? I mean, it does need to be put in law. Don't get me wrong. I applaud the governor for this, but this is nonsense that it has to be put into the law. Kindergarten through third grade, or in any manner that is not age appropriate or developmentally appropriate for students in accordance with state standards. It would also guarantee parents access to their children's education and health records and require that schools notify parents if there is a change in the student's services or monitoring relating to the student's mental, emotional, or physical health or well-being. Basically, what this is saying is that the schools cannot withhold information from the parents if the student says to the school, "Hey, I feel like a girl. I feel like I'm not really a boy. I'm a girl." Or if a girl says, "I feel like I'm not really a girl. I'm a boy," the school has to notify the parents of this thing so that the parents are aware. And this is a big outrage. How dare he? In Texas, Governor Abbott is going to investigate. Is going to investigate families of transgender children to ensure that there's no sexual abuse, which is extremely common in those scenarios. And there's no child abuse going on, and this is causing outrage. Both of these things, by the way, from what I understand of the bills, I am in complete support of. Now, there could be something I'm missing, and I leave that possibility open. But from what I understand, I'm in complete support of, because the fact of the matter is that biology tells us there are boys and there are girls. And thinking you're a girl doesn't make you a girl. You are a girl if you are biologically a girl, right? I mean, this is just right. Should I have to say this?
Does this have to be a profound thing to say in this day and age? There are boys and there are girls. Wow. Who'd have thought that? I
But
mean, come
yeah,
on.
yeah, this is what's going on. Okay, so let's start with the classroom. Let me show you this first video from got this one from Libs of TikTok, and this is a teacher who's explaining to other teachers how best to come out to your students.
I am an out teacher at my school, out as both bisexual and trans, and a lot of other teachers on TikTok were wondering how I managed coming out to my students. And it's a really interesting story. So this was right before the pandemic. I came back to my school after being away from it for a while, during which time I transitioned. So none of the kids knew me as trans, but I wanted to talk about it. So what I did is, as soon as I came back, I joined up with the GSA, realized how many questions the kids had, and decided the best thing to do would be to host a Q&A. So the kids made up a whole bunch of flyers, and then one day during lunch, we hosted the tea talk. It was a triple entendre of T as in trans, T as in spilling the tea, and T as in we literally served them tea. It was great. It was a huge success. So many people showed up. We didn't have nearly enough tea for everyone. And I spent about 10 minutes talking about the difference between gender, sex, and sexual orientation, and then also talking about my own life story, sort of like the highlight reel of how I decided to come out. And then for the remaining like 30 minutes, the kids asked questions and I gave answers wherever I felt comfortable.
I don't feel comfortable. What about you?
When, so taking just a step back on this, when did it become such a strong, brave thing to do to talk to kids about sex? I mean, why is this even a thing? Divorcing is from the whole transgender and gay and lesbian, all that stuff. Why are you talking to your children about your sex? What business is it of theirs? And why do you think you are the one that needs to be telling them? That's something that their parents should have the talk with them at the appropriate age. Why are schools trying to do this? I mean, beyond just, this is science, this is the reproductive system, I get that. But beyond that, why are we having this conversation? This doesn't make any sense. This was never the job of the school to do.
Especially in with what we're talking about in Florida with kindergarten through third grade. There's no reason that needs to be addressed in kindergarten through third grade. I mean, that's 8-year-olds. Listen, my 10-year-olds, and well, they're about to turn 11, are I dismiss them from the room if there's any kind of adult conversation going on that even talks about someone who had an affair or something. I don't want, no, we'll deal with that when we get there. I don't want that. You need to be isolated from this, and you'll deal with that later. This is not for you. We don't lay the weight of sexuality on the shoulders of children, because that's not something they're able to bear. And it traumatizes them and hurts them. But I just want to say this, because I wanted to say this at the beginning, but you were the one responding, so I got to let you. That's a dude in that video. That is really? A dude. Like, that's what I mean. That's the whole idea of being trans, right? Right now, he's presenting himself as a girl, but he's a dude.
Yeah.
That's who's teaching these kids, is a guy who's dressed up. That's drag, is what. No, my kids. If my kids are in that school, no, they're out. I'm quitting my job at homeschooling. We're moving to the wilderness and building a log cabin. I don't care. They ain't going to that school. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, who decided, again, I go back to who decided that this is the school's job to educate your children on this specific thing? That was always the parents' job. Why doesn't this fall to the parents still? Why does the school think, and specifically this teacher, why does this teacher think that it's okay to just make your opinions, if it were the other way around, somebody's trying to teach the Bible or conservatism, then there's all kinds of issues, and the school's gonna, jump on the parents' side and say you can't teach the Bible and conservatism to kids. That's your own personal opinions. But when the shoe's on the other foot, there's a problem. Why is this the job of the school? It's not. It's not the school's job. It's as a parent, like you said, I would be outraged. This is something that I get to decide for my kid, not for you, not you. That's my job. You can teach them the facts, science, history, math, language, these sorts of things. That's what you're there for. You're not there to indoctrinate my child. Why do you think that's you? That's not for you. And that upsets me a lot. I mean, and that's before we even get into the whole transgender thing. I mean, look, truth matters, and the truth is the truth. And people say, well, what do you care? Because the truth matters. And you don't stand up there and tell my kids something that's not true, that someone can be a boy 1 minute and a girl the next minute, because that's not true. Okay? If you are a man, you're a man. If you're a woman, you're a woman. That is how science works. That is what truth is. And then you're going to get up there as a teacher and stand in the place of authority and say, this can happen, but then, and that doesn't make any sense. So when you try to teach them math, what are they going to do? Oh, well, are you sure about that? Because, your other stuff didn't make any sense, but I'm supposed to believe you on this?
Well, and what's worse is it undermines Christianity, because contrary to the belief of a lot of people, sadly, Christianity is not based on blind faith. Christianity is based on facts, logic, and reason. We look at the evidence for the resurrection of Christ and we say, wow, he rose from the dead. And we look at this and we say, oh my goodness, that means the Bible's true. That means, oh, look at this. Prophecy 700 years later came true exactly the way it was prophesied. This, the kingdom of Tyre was destroyed exactly the way Ezekiel predicted it was going to be destroyed. And like all of these things. And we see all of these prophecies, all this evidence just mounting for the proof of Scripture. And we say, this is true because we can logic through this. We can reason through it. We can use our common sense and say, 1 plus 1 equals 2, right? But when you start undermining the foundations of logic and saying things are true because you believe them to be true, not because they actually are true in reality, you're not just undermining reason and logic and society as a whole, you're undermining Christianity as well. And this is why I take issue with it, because that doesn't just just ruin people's lives, it damns people's souls to hell. That's a big deal. But moving beyond the truth or error of it, I'm going to give you this next video. This is actually a girl who was about to transition to being a boy and changed her mind, and is still liberal, still thinks it's cool to transition, just decided that she was actually a girl. And she was attacked like you would not believe online over this. Let me show you the video.
You know what's terrifying? I was going to start testosterone today. I was going to start transitioning into being a male. But I had a major epiphany the other day, and I came to the realization that I was not transgender. Might be mind-blowing, yeah, nitpicker 18. I'm not a guy. I devoted so many years into trying to convince myself that I was a male, but I realized that I wasn't. Never thought that this day would come. Hi guys, I'm Maya. I'm a cisgender female.
She's embarrassed.
Controversial.
She's embarrassed. She's kind of ashamed that she's a cisgender female, that she is the gender that, or the biology tells her she is. And I don't say that to criticize her, but this is just her natural tendency. She wanted to be cool. She wanted to be someone. She wanted to define herself by being something other than what she was. And then after considering it for a while, she said, "No, I'm not this. This is not me. This is not being who I was created to be." Now, I don't know if she believes in the creator, but she realized this concept and she says, "I can't do this to my body." But think about what happens when we push this in schools, when we let this go on. What we're doing is we are actually hurting kids beyond just telling them that something that is false is true. We're actually convincing them that it is cool and it is hip and it is something different. It's something that separates you from the crowd, makes you special. If you are a boy but you decide to be a girl, like, you get all this praise and adoration, and you go and mutilate your body, destroy and ruin your life, displease your creator, and then at the end of it you realize, I was already always a boy, right? This person just barely missed that. This girl, Maya, she just barely missed going through all of that. And there are numerous stories of transgenders who've just felt pressure to be something different, thought it would fill that empty hole in them, thought it would make them love themselves again when they didn't love themselves or whatever it was, and did this just for all the wrong reasons, were encouraged every step of the way. Nobody said, "Hey, maybe this isn't a good idea." And they mutilated and destroyed their own bodies and wish to God that they didn't do it. How can we stand by and let this happen to kids? This is why I'm for what Greg Abbott is doing.
Yeah, you make a really good point about the pressure that these kids are under, because what's the narrative? The narrative is, the transgender people and transgender kids are, looked down on by society, but that's not the reality. The reality is it's very pushed. How many times have we seen these super liberal parents? The a 3-year-old will just say, "Oh, I feel like a girl," and they're a boy, and all of a sudden that's it. Now you have to be transgender, and we're going to do everything in our might and our power to push you in that direction. It's social points for them, right? Oh, we have a kid who's going to be transgender, and look at us, and we're brave, and we're going through this with him, and we're super supportive. That's child abuse, okay? A 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 10-year-old, they don't really know what they want aside from, maybe candy and toys. I mean, other than that, they're in no position to make life-altering decisions. We don't let people, drive until they're 16, right? We don't let people vote until they're 18. Drinking age is 21. You've got all of these set times, but we're going to allow kids as young as 3 and 5, and even younger in some cases. As soon as they can talk, they can suddenly decide, "Oh, I want to mutilate my body." How is it controversial to stop at least that? How is that a controversial thing? Even if you believe that, you can be transgender, you can transition to a different gender. This part should be pretty easy. This should be cut and dry, and I don't know how it's not. I really don't.
If you're not old enough to vote, you should not be old enough to choose. Even if we're going to live in an alternate reality where someone can actually choose their gender, okay, which they can't. But even if we lived in that reality, even if all of that were true, you still shouldn't be able to choose your gender until you're old enough to make your own decisions, right? If you're not old enough to vote, you're not old enough to drive, you're not old enough to you're not old enough to drink. Why? Because you could make decisions that you're going to regret later. That you're not responsible enough to make these decisions that are going to affect the rest of your life. That's why your parents make those decisions for you to a certain age. Then even if you can choose your gender, you should not be allowed to do so until you are at an age where you are capable of making that decision with a sane mind, with a sound mind. So this is why I am all for what Texas Governor Greg Abbott said. Here, I'm going to read just a snippet from the Daily Wire story on it. Texas Governor Greg Abbott made headlines last week when he called on members of the public to report parents suspected of giving gender transition treatments to their children. Now, this isn't just those who call themselves transgender. This is those who are giving surgery to children when they're too young to make a decision about what they want to do here. They're whatever decision they make, they're really too young to make that decision. Governor Abbott issued a directive last week as part of a letter he sent on Tuesday to the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services. He told the agency to conduct a prompt and thorough investigation of any instances involving minors receiving elective procedures for general transitioning. So he's not saying throw them all in jail. What he's saying is we need to investigate minors who are getting these procedures and make sure that they are not pressured to do so, that there's no child abuse taking place, and that this is something that they are able to a decision they're actually able to make, because it's going to affect the rest of their life. The governor also wrote that licensed professionals who work with children, people like teachers, nurses, and doctors, as well as members of the general public, should report parents to state authorities if they believe they're putting their child through gender transition treatments. Now, this is just common sense. Even in our church, when a child comes forward and says, I want to be a Christian, I want to be baptized, I want to live my life for Christ, we sit down with them, we talk to their parents, we want to make sure that this is a decision they are making of their own choice. Because even that, which is a wonderful decision, is going to affect the rest of their life and should be a decision that they're actually serious about making. And so Greg Abbott investigating, saying, listen, before you put your children through surgeries that are literally going to mutilate their body because you say that they believe they're some other gender, I want to make sure that the police are involved here to make sure that child abuse isn't taking place. I think that's good. But before you respond to that, I've got one more TikTok video for you. This woman does not fully agree with me on what I just said.
If you are a transgender minor living in the state of Texas, listen. Right when you think Greg Abbott could not possibly get any worse after he abandoned all of Texas to freeze last year, he does. As of today, Greg Abbott has ordered that CPS or Child Protective Services now investigate every family of a transgender child for child abuse. It's right here. You can just Google it. Here it is. Not only that, but your teachers now are going to be fined if they do not report transgender children to CPS so they can be investigated for child abuse. It is a disgusting reminder that Republicans never cared about children. They only cared about unborn babies. Any child that is homeless, not white, or a part of LGBT, they do not give a about you. Republicans would rather watch transgender children K-word themselves than give them access to transitioning healthcare. With last year's freeze lifting COVID restrictions, and now this, Greg Abbott is responsible for the deaths of thousands of Texans. So, f*** you, Greg Abbott.
I surprised Jonathan with all of these. He has not seen any of these yet. So,
oh, man.
Jonathan, there's so much to say because almost every line of this is completely just nonsense and false. What are your first thoughts?
Wow, Republicans are such jerks for standing up for, infants being allowed to live and to stand against children cutting off healthy organs and parts of their body.
In the name of healthcare. She called that transitioning healthcare. Cutting off parts of your body is now healthcare. Like, what in the world?
Oh, I mean, you're right. There's just so many places to go that just everything she said kind of contradicted, first of all, reality, and second of all, the things that the whole point she was trying to make. She's saying, the Republicans are, against your kids. They're the ones standing up for the kids. Again, we go back to, how can they choose this stuff? But this is insane. I mean, the entire debate is somewhat insane, right? At some level. But children, how can you possibly? How is there there's not an argument. There's just statements, And she lied, like you had said before. Governor Abbott didn't say we're going to investigate every trans child. He said we're going to investigate reports of, hormonal therapy and actual they're doing something about
therapy,
it, right?
Actual medical treatment that they're changing the makeup of their body because of this choice that they're too
Exactly. So
young
if
to make.
someone identifies as trans, it doesn't automatically mean, oh, you're under investigation. And that's exactly what she said, word for word. She said every trans child's going to
Oh,
be investigated.
and she said, well, and teachers are investigated if they don't report trans children. No, teachers are investigated if they don't report transitioning children who
Yeah.
are going through transitioning surgery at a age too young to make those decisions.
If you look at the suicide rate, and I believe that's what she said. Is that what she meant by the K word? Kill themselves? Is that what the K word was?
I'm
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 not sure.
I'm
She said
guessing. I'm not.
she said the Republicans would rather they K word themselves. I think that's what she's talking about. The suicide rate among transgender people in general is incredibly high. Um, and that's actually a reason, I guess, that is given. Oh, we should allow them to transition because the suicide, yeah, the suicide rate doesn't go down after the transition. The suicide rate is just very high because these are people that are mentally, unstable. They have an issue that needs to be dealt with. They are, people that God loves that need help. And instead of giving them the help that they need, we're just letting insanity just take over and just saying, you know what, whatever you want to do. And that is, I mean, that's just so wrong. I mean, I feel bad for these people, especially the kids, of course, but anybody who has to go through this. I mean, mentally, they're in real anguish, and there's a real answer to it, but they're being pointed in the exact opposite way, and they're not being helped, and the suicide rates back that up.
Yeah. What we're doing is we're encouraging mental and disease, actually, and it's destroying people. It's ruining people's lives. It is leading to suicide. It's leading to all of these things, and the suicide rate is so high, so we need to be more accepting. Well, first of all, no, being suicidal because people don't accept lies is something that you need mental help for. It doesn't mean that we need to accept lies. But beyond that, that's not the reason why they're suicidal. Many, many, many of them have even said that the thing that made them depressed was that they transitioned. They did all this mutilization, and it didn't give them the fulfillment. It didn't fill the empty space in their heart that they were trying to fill. And that's because that can only be filled by Christ. This is why this show exists. This is why we harp on transgender stuff so much, because these are people who recognize that they're missing something, and they think the thing that they're missing can be substituted by changing their gender or finding someone new to sleep with, maybe sleeping with something that I've never slept with before. All of these crazy LGBTQ things. These are people trying to fill a hole that's left in their heart, and what they need is Jesus Christ. And we want to point people to Christ. And to do that, we've got to point out the sin, got to point out the thing that they're substituting for Christ, and say, repent of that and turn to Christ. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you next time on Point of View.